you go to that office and you visit that grower and they have, binders and binders and binders of yield maps behind them, but what have they really done with them? Some of them, I think some of the early findings where I could really tell where I needed drainage in my field. I think those are some of the easy ones to answer. But then from there, like, where do you go from that point? Is it fertility? Is it seeding rate? Is it some hybrid factor, something else that's going on inside my field? And I think what that led to is you had a lot of companies in the last 5 to 10 years that have come to market, whether they're startups or they spun off this other part of their business, and they said, hey, Mr. Grower, we want to solve that problem for you, but we don't actually need to talk to you. You just need to send us your data. We're going to run it through our algorithm, and we're going to kick back some sort of recommendation that's going to boost your yield X%, right? And I think there was a lot of promises that maybe weren't kept. I'm not saying all companies are like that. There's a lot of really good data companies out there too. But I think what that's done is that's really soured the grower's perspective of what data is and what value can I really get out of this information.
Ladies and gentlemen, farmers, ranchers, and distinguished guests, thank you for listening to the Farm for Profit podcast, where we discuss the latest ideas, methods, trends, and techniques available to help your farm achieve higher levels of farm profitability. The Farm for Profit podcast is co-hosted by Tanner Winterhoff, the Iowa Bankerman, and David Whitaker, the Iowa Land Guy, where in tandem they will share their ideas and advice from industry experts. Thank you again for listening to the Farm for Profit podcast. Remember, if you aren't farming for profit, you won't be farming for long. And now, here's Tanner and David.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit podcast. This is Tanner Winterhoff.
This is Corey Hillebo.
And this is a special show because Corey stopped mid-harvest to come in and record this today.
Extra special.
Extra special. You guys should feel nothing less than super special. Thank you again for listening to the podcast. You are special to us. Remember to hit subscribe. Go out there on Spotify, Apple, and leave us a rating and a review. We love the text messages, but that will bonus push us out to some new listeners. What is our listener review today brought by, Corey?
It's brought to you by Ag Leader. And we are specifically talking about their spraying technology with the Right Spot.
Oh, yeah, Right Spot. Absolutely. Because that's one of the jobs that is probably one of the most strenuous. You say that your dad's one of the best sprayer operators.
I don't say it, but everyone that we spray for, the next year, they want to make sure Scott is spraying.
Now, would you think they would like it even better if you guys used Right Spot technology?
I would think so, and I think we would probably like it too for our bottom line, because I'm sure the herbicide usage has gone down because it's the right amount all the time when you're going around the curves and all that.
Yeah. And I remember too when we talked about this in the earlier episode that it's nozzle by nozzle shut off, but then they also have the technology to make sure you get the right droplet size.
Yep.
Because we don't want anything drifting, and we want to make sure we get the best coverage possible.
Yep. And then I think of like our current shutoffs, there might be 7 sections on there that are 10, 20 feet wide. This is nozzle by nozzle every 10, 15 inches.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Right Spot's the way to go. You can marry it up to about any sprayer that's available. So go check out agleader.com for more information. But who is the review from today?
It's from a TikTok person. His name is Joe9899. And his review is, "This is cutting-edge content that people need. Short, sweet, to the point. Thank you, Joe." And you can give us those reviews by texting or calling us at 515-207-9640.
All right, before we jump into our topic today, we want to thank Jace Young at Legacy Farmer for giving us another legacy tip. Let's tune into that right now.
Jace Young here from Legacy Farmer, bringing you another legacy principle today titled Long-Term Decisions with Short-Term Emotions. How many farmers do you know that jump at the bit to buy a piece of ground when it comes up? I get it. That's what farmers do. We want to own the land, and there's a sense of pride that comes with knowing that this piece of ground will become a part of our legacy. Farmers will find every justification they can as to why that piece of ground is worth it, and I totally get it. But here's the problem with that. 99% of the time when farmers are making massive financial decisions about buying a piece of ground or putting up a big building or whatever, they are making that decision based off of short-term facts and short-term emotions. What do I mean by that? When grain prices are high, we can justify any purchase because the numbers make sense today. But remember, when you're buying a piece of ground, you're signing up for a 20, 25, or 30-year loan in most cases. So this means you are making a 20, 25, or 30-year decision here. 99% of farmers do not think this way. The question that you should be asking yourself is this: yes, this piece of ground will cash flow at today's grain prices, but will it cash flow when prices drop back down? And then run the numbers for yourself. That one thought is honestly so powerful and could have saved so many family operations across this country from making short-term emotional decisions without considering long-term implications. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There is no small investment on the farm. Everything costs a lot of money, and we need to be thinking through the long-term implications of our decisions and how the numbers will really work out long-term.
There you go.
Wow.
Jace, I think hits it nail on the head again. As a banker, I run these types of calculations all the time. That hit home for you, Corey?
It always hits home, and this especially, trying to get some capital purchases and things. That's, you have to think about not just the good, but the bad. Can you get through the bad? Obviously, you'll do good in the good.
That's right. Well, thanks again. If you guys want to jump on the Legacy Farmer train, go to legacyfarmer.org and sign up with Jace today. But let's jump into our conversation on this episode. And today, Corey, we're going to talk about technology in the cloud, data management. I know we talk a lot about we need to gather data and we need to use data to make our decisions, but I don't think we've really talked about how we can actually use it.
Yeah, and in a world of, it seems like data management is at every farmer's doorstep, people knocking on trying to sell them something, it gets a little murky. So we need to figure that out.
Yeah, so today we have the Eastern Sales Manager for North America, Luke James from Ag Leader. Ag Leader is a company based out of Ames, Iowa, but Luke is not, so excited to find out where he's sitting today. Previously, Luke was an agronomic and business management consultant at James Farms, so there's an ag tie in your background, right, Luke? And you've been with Ag Leader for how long?
15 years.
Nice. And where are you at now? Tell us a little bit about Luke.
Actually, right now I'm residing in St. Augustine, Florida. So I know that probably seems like, why would a guy from Illinois be living in Florida right now? We just kind of made the jump and decided to move. But yeah, I grew up on a farm in Western Illinois. Still actively engaged in the farm, obviously from a little different perspective now, but grew up raising corn and soybeans. We had cattle, was around agriculture my whole life, worked on the farm my whole life. Led me to a career with Ag Leader. When I went to college, I was ag business agronomy minor. So again, just been engulfed in my whole time. We actually had a PF3000, which is one of Ag Leader's older yield monitors in our combine. I don't even think I realized that when I interviewed at Ag Leader that we actually had Ag Leader equipment on our combine. So I started Ag Leader, started in support like a lot of people that have been inside of that company. Worked my way up into the career that I am today. It's kind of the cool thing about Ag Leaders. You've got a lot of people with very similar stories, right? They grew up on a farm. They're actively engaged in agriculture. They're passionate about it. They use a lot of the technology that we develop, right? So I think that's kind of unique for us. Maybe that's not unique for all ag businesses, but it seems like there's a real farmer-centric vibe inside of the company. And, we're an independently owned company. Al started our company in 92. We're celebrating 30 years this year. So it's cool to see the camaraderie and the culture just continue to blossom.
Yeah. That's what I like about Ag Leader too, is I can tell that they're very farm background centric. I mean, not saying that it's required to work there, but I can tell when I call in and they know that it's harvest season and it's a pretty important question that needs to get handled. Maybe it's after hours. They know because so many of them have that farm background.
Right. But it kind of made you guys a easy choice to talk about data and data management with, because we know that you could put data on a hard drive. You could use the SD cards in your phones, your iPads. You can throw it up into a cloud. But we want to dissect today how we can do this, what the best way to manage it is. And it's probably different on every farm, right, Luke?
Absolutely. I think it's different in every farm. It's probably different depending on what region you're in as well, right? We see a lot of farms in the Midwest. I think of our operation, probably Corey's operation too, where it's a lot of, father, son, very family driven. Versus if you go somewhere like in the Mid-South, we have a territory manager down there who has, it's a family farm, but they're not running the equipment, right? They have hired hands as a larger operation, a larger swath. So their needs are a little bit different than maybe what ours are, but we still have to provide tools that can provide value to all those different operations. So I think that's what's unique about us is we have a pretty wide suite of tools that can benefit those different types of operations.
So we don't have David here today.
Nope.
So we don't have David to tell us that data is the currency of the internet and data is the currency of the future of farming. So I had to steal a quote from a professor. So this is agriculture industry is utilizing data more now than ever before, said Brian Luck, a biological systems engineer professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Is that the University of Wisconsin that just lost their head football coach?
I don't know if that's the one.
Anyway, data is gathered from within the soil, from within the fields, the plants that are growing on the fields, the weather occurring during the growing season, and the machinery used in the fields. So he's trying to sum up here in this article that we collect all kinds of data. But how many people, Corey, do you think actually use the data they collect?
That's very good because I know so many people that have a yield monitor in their combine and either aren't calibrating it or aren't using the data to make decisions. And that's a very expensive piece of equipment and technology to have on there. If you're not leveraging that to make your farm better, I see an issue with that. Why even have it?
So it should be more than entertainment purposes going across the field.
Yeah, like, let me get this, pull the stick back and get that Snapchat opportunity for the high yield. So,
Sounds like you've done that before, Corey.
I've maybe know how that happens a little bit. No yield tweets. That's how that goes, and then those are always the ones that get snapped on the old Twitter machine. But it does feel like we're gathering data at every place we turn, from fuel consumption to what we're seeding to spraying. I mean, it gets murky. Like I said earlier, how do we manage all this?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. I think it's an overwhelming challenge, and it's difficult to your point, to even know where to start, right? Like, we're gathering data on the planter, on the sprayer, on the combine. When we're out in the field scouting, we've got other people probably helping us on the farm too that are gathering information. Like, what do you do with all of it? You mentioned the yield data and how that's always been, that's kind of where data management really started, was, I'd say, with yield mapping and then probably georeferenced soil sampling, right? I think that's probably the two pinnacle things. I think one probably led to the other too, right? You go to that office and you visit that grower and they have, binders and binders and binders of yield maps behind them, but what have they really done with them? Some of them, I think some of the early findings where I could really tell where I needed drainage in my field. I think those are some of the easy ones to answer. But then from there, like, where do you go from that point? Is it fertility? Is it seeding rate? Is it some hybrid factor, something else that's going on inside my field? And I think what that led to is you had a lot of companies in the last 5 to 10 years that have come to market, whether they're startups or they spun off this other part of their business, and they said, hey, Mr. Grower, we want to solve that problem for you, but we don't actually need to talk to you. You just need to send us your data. We're going to run it through our algorithm, and we're going to kick back some sort of recommendation that's going to boost your yield X%, right? And I think there was a lot of promises that maybe weren't kept. I'm not saying all companies are like that. There's a lot of really good data companies out there too. But I think what that's done is that's really soured the grower's perspective of what data is and what value can I really get out of this information. And I think there's a lot of different opportunities there. If you are that guy that wants to take 5 years worth of yield data, there are tools out there. We have desktop software tools that would allow you to average, normalize, create zones if you want to do that. That's not for everybody though, right? I think some of the simple things, and this guy from University of Brian Luck, I think one thing he said there is data is gathered, but then he said at the very end machinery used in field. And I think that's where maybe our greatest opportunity for some of that low-hanging fruit is. If you think about, if I'm planting across field, I had this scenario on our family farm a couple of years ago when we started planting. We have InCommand 1200, which shows you row by row mapping performance across your planter. So if you're having a spacing issue, or if you're having a singulation issue, or if you're having a down pressure issue. It's going to show you right on the screen. We had started planting very first pass, and my dad was running the machine, and we had just pulled the meters out, ran the meters. We had electric drives on there, downforce, and his very first pass, the alarm starts chirping at him that he's getting doubles consistently on row number 7. And he's kind of the old school mentality, like once I start planting, like we don't stop, right?
Yep.
Unless the row unit falls off the planter, then maybe we'll stop. But we're not going to stop, right?
Even then, you might go to the end row before you fix it.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I mean, he even grew up. I can remember as a kid playing with the old Dickie John C2 monitors with the lights on them that would light up, right? And every once in a while, those bulbs would burn out.
Oh.
So anytime they would stop flashing, he would just think the bulb burn out and just continue to go.
Yep.
So we're talking about that type of mentality. He actually stopped. He got out. He looked at row number 7 and saw that this seed delivery system is 1770, and how it goes into the meter. There's a little vent that released pressure off of it for the meter. That vent cover was open, and essentially that seed was just spilling in that seed pool and creating the doubles. I'm not sure if you would have saw that with a traditional seed monitor if it would have picked it up to that detail. And if you didn't, I think those are the mistakes that can really cost you potentially more than what you can gain from taking your data and normalizing it and creating some sort of recommendation. I think this is where data can really benefit any farmer in today's world.
So I'm gonna play Dave's role right now because, of course, I've got a map for where this show should go.
Yeah.
I've already got a prescription writ that I want to happen in this show, but I want to pull back because you just kind of gave us, there's two perspectives on data.
Yeah.
There's instantaneous data that you could make an action or a decision on in the moment. I saw something while I was planting, I need to make an adjustment, whether that was to population or that was to mechanically to make sure we're planting correctly, or to do something else along those. And then vice versa of you could collect your yield data or your as applied data and analyze that post pass to make a decision for either your next pass across the field or your next hybrid selection maybe.
Yeah, your next crop.
Okay. So there's two ways of looking at that. But I know with the clients that I have and the network that I've built up that everybody uses their data differently. Like I've got one producer that will map where the grain cart goes in their field. And they want to track where the compaction is going to be the greatest. And their grain cart drivers are instructed to take certain paths through the field to limit compaction in certain areas and create areas of high compaction that they would come back and tear up or manage in a different fashion. Mm-hmm. Versus somebody else who I know uses the GPS to map to make sure there's no overlap or no spot that doesn't get done. And I don't think it's ever been pulled off the system before.
Yeah.
So there's all different levels. How do we make this an episode that everybody can get value from? What's the first step? You talked about potentially it's just in the moment using the data to make a correction because of a monitoring system. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that's the best first step for someone who doesn't utilize their data, or what's your advice?
I think that's the low-hanging fruit, right? So if you have access and insight into your machine and you can make sure that it's performing to its full potential, that's going to help. That's like step one to ensure that I get a solid yield, right? After that, there's a lot of other environmental factors, management factors that can influence the end result yield. But if you give that seed the best chance to yield, or you place it in the best environment, right, in the best way possible, then I think that's essential. So I think having a window into that is definitely critical. From there, you could really look at that yield piece a couple different ways. You mentioned, the ability to analyze that data later, right? So you got to have the display in the cab to collect all this first of all. Once you have it collected, then you have the opportunity to use it however you want, right? So it depends if Corey or Tanner, if you're the guy that likes to go home and analyze his data in, December, January, February, if you're really gifted, you've spent time learning the software, maybe you've got an agronomic background and some things to look for, and you can help answer some of those questions. We've got tools that can help you. I think, you probably still need that trusted advisor that's got boots on the ground, that has that agronomic knowledge to work hand in hand with you, right? I don't know that you can do any of it completely on your own. I'm sure there probably are some people that can, but it feels like if you're collecting that information, then you have the opportunity to do with it what you want. So if you're collecting the planting data, you're collecting the harvest data, and you have all that in a format that's accessible that you can either use on your own machine, or if you're using like our cloud software, you can automatically share that with your trusted advisor. If you have a crop consultant that analyzes your yield data for you and maybe creates fertilizing recs based on removal, right? The faster you can get him that yield data or her that yield data, they can write those recs and they could be out there spreading fertilizer in a lot more efficient, timely manner. So you mentioned using data. Man, there's so many different ways you can use it. I think step one is you got to collect it, right? And you got to collect it well. And then step two is you got to have that insight into what's going on that machine, so you're preventing those mistakes from happening.
Yep. So you mentioned something that stood out to me, and that is like using a trusted advisor, or I would call maybe a third party.
Yeah.
Us as farmers, we oftentimes feel like we're the jack of all trades and the master of none, right? That quote goes on, but it feels like we're a plumber one day, an electrician one day, a master agronomist one day, and we're try to do all this. And we used to try to do that on our farm. We used to try to go in, analyze all our data on Ag Leaders SMS, and we could get our way around it, but it's a lot of stuff that you're going through. It's intense. If you don't use it regularly, I would say at least once a week, it's like trying to learn how to ride a bicycle again, and you've never rode it. It just took us so long. So I would say those third party, those trusted advisors are key. It makes us focus on our job of let's just get good data, let's know how to run the system, and let's get it to our third party. So then we can they're unbiased, and then we can make accurate decisions on the farm based on what they tell us, because we gathered really good data using Ag Leader.
Okay, so let's do that. How do you collect it, Luke? What do our listeners need to have in their cab in order to collect this data?
Well, I think first and foremost, you need a display, right? So for us, if you're running Ag Leader equipment, you'd need an Ag Leader in-command display, and the Command 1200 is kind of our flagship display. That then you could secondarily connect that display to your planter. You could collect planting information, hybrid information, population, downforce maps. You could see speed. You could see all that information there. That same display can be used across all the different facets of your operation. I think that's one thing that makes Ag Leader unique, is we're an aftermarket company, so we build technology for all different brands and all different types of equipment. That same display that you're using for planting, you can also use that in your sprayer. You can start collecting all that spraying information. Again, it's really about having that display in the cab, but then also there's a little bit of management you got to do up front too, right? You got to have the right grower names, the right field names. You got to make sure you're recording the right products. Like, there's some setup work you have to do out of the gate. But once that's set up, especially if you're using some of our connectivity or cloud services or products like AgFinity, if you have multiple displays, if you're connected into that cloud, we'll take that information from your planter and we'll populate that into your sprayer. And we'll take that information from your sprayer and we'll populate that in your combine. So you're not making those errors where you're naming, Main South 1, M South 2, or your dad calls it something slightly different than what your grandpa did and what you do. You don't have all that mistakes. And that the data cleanup, when I started at Ag Leader, I worked in the SMS group, and that was 90% of the calls was data cleanup, right? Fixing fields that were misnamed, fixing products that were named wrong. If you can help alleviate some of that burden, that helps you collect that good quality data that then you could use for some of those other things that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I want to mention on the AgFinity, we use that we got that, I think, in 2019. We got Ag Leader downforce, electric meters, all that, and our first pass across the field, we were having issues, and was able to call our Ag Leader dealer, and he could log in to our planter or to our monitor real time and watch as we're going across. And I think it was a downforce issue. I think someone typed in the wrong minimum downforce or something like that. And he was able to watch row by row and like, you need to go into this screen, do this and fix it. It's like, that's awesome.
Well, that's a profitability tip right there.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that they could remote in, that you guys could see, because I know that's what the help on the farm is going to need. It's either they're going to call me,
Yep.
and I got to remember how to do it,
Yep.
or if we can diagnose this with someone who actually knows what they're doing.
And no longer do you absolutely need to have that thumb drive to upload your prescription. It can just be uploaded from the computer to the monitor via the cloud.
So so is that right, Luke? So now we collected this data. We've got the programs necessary, the equipment necessary to collect it. Is that how we transfer the data? Is it just go to the cloud?
Yep, that's one way. We still have thumb drives in our displays that you can use to transfer data over. The risk there is what happens to that thumb drive once you pull it out of the display. Does it get lost? Does it go through the washer? Does it end up who knows where, right? If we're connected to the cloud through our Xfinity product, that data, as soon as it's logged, it's automatically uploaded to the cloud and it's saved there. So you can access that, on your phone. If you're out and let's say you had gotten done planting, you're out, it's July, you're scouting, you notice that there's a lot of sudden deaths in some soybeans you're in. You're like, man, what variety is this? I want to take a note on this. If you run our cloud software, we have an AgFinity app you pull up on your phone, and you can pull that planting map up right on your phone. And it would use your GPS inside your phone to tell you where you're at inside of the field. It would show you the variety you're in. If you recorded the population information, all that data would be there. Your spraying data, all that information. I think if we circle back to data management, what do you do with all that data? How do you use it? There's lots of different levels to it, right? Just having access to it easily on your phone when you need it, I think is crucial for a lot of that stuff. It helps you answer a lot of those questions that if you didn't have it, you may think, man, I should really remember to go back and look at that. Maybe even write a note. Maybe you don't. You probably forget half the time, right? If it's not something super significant that stuck out to you. If you start thinking about when you're in the cab of the combine and you're going past the pass and you see fluctuations in yield past the pass, what are you thinking? Like, man, what is causing this yield to adjust? If you have that data in the cloud, you can pull that up side by side right on your in-command display, and you can start looking at planting maps, you can look at spraying maps, you can look at fertilizing maps. You could maybe start to put some of that together without ever having to analyze data on a computer.
Yeah. I mean, what do we have with us at all times? It's usually our cell phone, right? You can have all the data in the world stored on your computer at home, but where are a lot of your decisions made? If you're out at the dealer's place or whatever, you can actually pull it up like, no, actually that hybrid did less, last year in this soil or, so that being able to have it at your fingertips at all times is pretty crucial.
Well, I even thought about that. Flagging rocks or tile blowouts or, something else in the field, just having the ability to do that. So
yeah, absolutely.
So what is the cloud? Do you know how to describe that to those who don't use it? What is the cloud? Because I'm
trying to think of a good joke here.
Right, I'm looking outside at clouds right now, and I know that my data is not up there.
You don't know that, but it's a great question. What's the cloud? I think the cloud and the term data in the cloud has gotten some again, it's got some good things that go with it, but then there's also been some negative thoughts along with data in the cloud, right? Essentially, all we're doing is utilizing the internet to take that information from your display. If you're out in the field, you're probably utilizing a cellular connection, right? We have modems that you could put in your tractor, or you could turn on the hotspot on your phone or your iPad and use that data to transfer that information. And essentially, it goes to a server where it's stored and it's safeguarded, right? And then that server allows you to have access to it on any other device connected to the internet as well. We've got kind of a unique data policy at AgLeader. If you read our terms of use and our data policy, and we've been this way from the beginning, we're very transparent and clear on this information is yours. We're not going to use this data We don't claim ownership to this data. We're not going to mine it. We're not going to do anything with it, right? We are a aftermarket precision ag company. Like we don't sell seed. We don't sell fertilizer. We just sell ag leader hardware products and some of these software products you can utilize. So I think that's a concern with people when they think of data in the cloud. They think, what's that information being used for? And we're not doing anything for it. We're just housing it for you so you can access it and move it around.
So this is where data is not the currency of the internet. Data is your currency, and it stays in your possession. Whereas there's a lot of companies out there that will take your data, and it's still good for you, but they will actually turn around and make a lot of money selling that or making decisions on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
It's good to know with Ag Leader that it's safe because I know there's a lot of people out there that don't want to share their data, don't want to transfer it to anybody else. They're so locked down and so scared it's going to get stolen. But we actually have here in central Iowa a couple of these clouds that take up 80 acres apiece of prime Iowa farm ground because they built these server hubs.
Like the Amazon stuff?
Right. Amazon, Microsoft here in central Iowa has developed kind of a tech hub where probably some of your information is being stored via the internet.
How does that stuff work? Does Ag Leader rent space or buy space from someone like that, or do you have your own hub?
Yep, exactly. We rent space and buy space from larger companies like that. I don't think that we could have all of the security measures in place to have such a large data field like what you described. Like, I think that would be extremely difficult for Ag Leader to house all that. And I think that there are companies that do that well, and there are a lot of companies out there that do that for a lot of other companies that you utilize too. Whether you know it or not, a lot of that information is stored on these servers, whether it's Amazon or Microsoft.
It's something we don't think about very often. It sounds like a whole team of security people and all that probably, because you hear about these data breaches all the time, and at the end of the day, it's kind of out of your hands, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. We should take that old chicken shed that you have and just fill it full of servers.
There we go.
We're going to
As long as you don't mind mice chewing all the wires.
Well, it would be safe. It's going to come in there and it'll never get back out again. Well, that's good to know. But what if we're not ready, Luke, for the cloud? What if we got a listener here that goes, I'm not putting my data up there?
Yeah, no, we get it. We serve all different types of growers. Like I said, different regions, different points in their farming careers or what they believe in or what they don't, right? So we have the ability to utilize the cloud if you're ready for it. If you're not, we still have that thumb drive on the side of the display that you can pull that information off. You could install SMS, which is our desktop software, on your PC at home, and you could import the data in and read it in and do what you want with it, or share it with your agronomist if you choose to from a thumb drive. And we have the ability to do this without ever connecting anything to the cloud. You lose a lot of those conveniences if you're not connected to the cloud, right? Like the ability to access data wherever you want, you lose some of that. The peace of mind knowing that all of your fields are named the same across your operation. You lose some of those conveniences of sharing things as simple as guidance lines from one machine to the other. I mean, when we're going in and say we're in a strip till environment, like you want to use that same line like that. That is a piece of gold for you, that guidance line, right? Being able to use the same one over and over and over and ensure you're on the right path. All of that's part of our data management space too.
He keeps coming up with examples that I didn't think about.
Yep.
Because that's something that you do on your farm with strip till is you want to plant right back on the strip. I know there's farmers out here that farm on tram lines, and everything's lined up to match sprayer track, planter track.
Yep.
The whole works.
Or just, I'm thinking 2 pieces of tillage equipment in a field or something. You want it on the same line and all that. So it makes sense.
Yeah, we've got the ability to share those coverage maps back and forth too. So even if you have 2 planters in the same field and one planter planted all of the indrows, if you come in with that second machine and you're connected, now all of that application data, those maps, is transferred to that second machine. So when it hits the indrows, all the rows are shutting off one by one like they're supposed to. You're not getting that overlap.
It's pretty crucial.
Well, and we talked about CartAce also, to where if you're connected the combine and the tractor together, you can now potentially have a more efficient cart driver.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You think about the size of some of these huge swathers right now, and the little amount of clearance there are between the duals and the tractor that's pulling the grain cart and the side of that head, man, there's little room for error. So if you can utilize a product like CartAce that allows you to go in, park underneath the auger, set the offset that you want, that you're comfortable with, and then when you pull up to that combine, hit a button and steers right next to it, ensures you're not going to run into anything. It helps that inexperienced cart operator too. I mean, labor is a challenge, right? And it's a challenge to get people and to get the right people, good people. Not saying you can't get good people, but experienced people that have ran grain carts for years. They're not, they're not always easy to find.
This is all still data.
All of it.
I mean, I'm not going to say my mind's blown because I knew there was a lot of data used in agriculture, but it's fun to see how collecting a piece can connect to decision making or more efficiency. It's all going to lead to higher levels of profitability, because if you're more efficient, or you can make a better decision, or you can make a better decision more efficiently,
Yep.
that all counts. So you use all this on your farm right now.
Yeah, we do. Yep.
So because you also have an in-command display.
Yep.
And you utilize that, obviously, to connect with other platforms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to just be an Ag Leader product. People can get data from all kinds of sources.
Yeah, so even with our cloud software, we have basically it's called an API. It gives other companies the ability to connect into our cloud and exchange information back and forth. So if Corey wants to share information from Deere from his My John Deere account into his AgFinity account, we've got connections that allow for that to happen. Obviously, you have to go in and set that up. We don't just automatically give them the ability to grab information. The user has to go and log into their account, give that permission. But once that's set up, yeah, we can engage and interact with other companies and platforms out there too, which I think is pretty important. Being a third-party company, we need to be able to be adaptable and understand that not everyone's going to use one system or one piece of hardware, right? You may have a John Deere display and an Ag Leader display, and we get that. We need to be compatible so you can utilize that information.
Well, yeah, you're wanting to go across a bunch of different platforms, so it's only right that you expect other people might be able to go against a bunch of different platforms.
Right.
So, yep. It's crazy to think where technology has come in the last 15 to 20 years, and especially the last 5 years. Where do you think we're going to be in 15 to 20 years down the road?
Oh, man. Yeah. So at Ag Leader, one of the initiatives that we've been really focused on is kind of bridging that gap between what we're doing today and like full out autonomy, right? Because we think eventually we'll end up at autonomy, right? I don't know when we'll get there, how long that will take, what that adoption rate will look like, but how do you create products that kind of fit that gap in between? So CartAce is a great example of that, right? So CartAce is not full autonomy, but it still enables that user to be a better operator and kind of takes over some of those critical functions like steering the grain cart next to a combine. We think there's a lot of those types of opportunities out there, and those products aren't as expensive as maybe buying an autonomous tractor or autonomous grain cart, the whole thing, right? Like those are very cost prohibitive for most growers today. Eventually that technology will become more affordable in time. But where are those opportunities where we can kind of do, it's not semi-autonomy, that's a wrong way to describe it, but how can we use connectivity to allow growers to be better operators inside the cab? And I think that's where you're going to see this thing just explode in the next 5 to 10 years.
So John Deere will probably have an autonomous tractor. Or they already do, right? Other companies already have one. Will Ag Leader have a role in autonomy?
Yeah, I think we will. I don't know what that will look like or how soon that will happen, but it's definitely something that's ranked very high on our business rank list, right? So something that we're investigating actively now. We're looking at where do we fit inside of this market, what makes sense. Like I said, with that CartAce example, we feel like those are some of the steps we can take to get to that place. I think there's other similar features out there too that you'll see some from us probably in the next couple of years too. I
mean, you guys already have all the tools to probably bring stuff together. I think if you don't have to go buy that really expensive, fully autonomous tractor with no cab. Maybe you could
Right.
just turn one of your tractors you already have into something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this, Luke, has been a lot of fun. I want to give you a chance here to share something that we didn't catch. If you got anything else you want to add about data and data management before I summarize. Otherwise, I'll do my best to try and get it all covered.
Yeah, enjoyed the discussion, guys. I think we talked about a lot of different things. I think the big takeaway is data doesn't just have to be 7 years of yield maps, right? Like there's a lot of other ways you can leverage data and information inside of your operation, and some of them can be a lot easier than trying to sit down and average out 5 years and create management. I'm not saying that's not important, because that is important. There's a place there, but I think there's a lot of other opportunities too that growers can utilize inside of their operation that they can adapt a lot more quickly.
I love that.
I want to go full circle. I do have one more question.
Yeah.
It was mentioned at the beginning about how many different companies are kind of maybe shoving data and data management, the words, down people's throats. And at every turn, we have an option to buy something in that space with all these startups and everything. Do you think that has hurt the general business of data and data management?
I think it's confused people, right? I think it's turned people away. I think there's been growers that have probably shared their information with one of these companies with the expectation that they would get something delivered that they didn't get, right? I think anytime, this is my personal opinion, but I think anytime that you remove boots on the ground from a management decision, there's too much room for error, right? There's so many things that happen inside of a field that even though we're recording all of this data, there's so many things that you may not understand. Like there's context you don't have about this operation that unless you involve that grower in that discussion before you're creating whatever you're creating, I think you're setting yourself up to have some hard times, or at least miss something that's so fundamental that I didn't know that there was a hog confinement in the middle of the field, which has impacted yield for years, right?
Yeah.
If I just get your information and I throw it through all of my formulas and equations and I spit something out, it may say, man, that area is very compacted. I don't really understand, but I'm going to tell you just to do this there, right?
Yep. And why is Ag Leader going to be the choice, or how is Ag Leader going to differentiate themselves from all this other noise that's going on in the industry?
I mean, we've always been the company that has given growers the tools to do this or to work with someone else to do this with, right? We've always been the kind of we've got this full suite of different things, from desktop software to cloud software to auto steer to yield monitoring. All these things you can adapt in your operation, and then you have the power and the ability to use that however you want. And I don't think that will change. I think we'll continue to provide those types of tools that empower that grower to do what they choose to do.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Well,
And they're 30 years old.
And they are. Happy anniversary.
30 years old.
Birthday. It's
Yeah,
not your
thank you.
anniversary. I know we always say companies have anniversaries,
Yeah.
30-year anniversaries, but it's really your birthday.
Yeah.
Birthdays.
Yeah. All right. You have to think about the best advice that you've ever been given, because that's our payoff question at the end of every show. So I'm going to summarize. Corey, you get to challenge.
Wow.
We are here talking about data and data management. You know, it started off the conversation just really reiterating the number of different ways that we capture data, from planting, monitoring, to tillage passes, to your sprayer, to the yield monitor, soil samples. You combine all of that data, and that's what we're trying to manage. It sounds like a lot, and that's probably why we need a trusted advisor, why we need somebody on an advisory team to help us put that together. But we can collect that data from a lot of different sources. Obviously, using Ag Leaders programs is the topic of conversation today, but you can then take that data and transfer it in multiple different ways. You can use Agfinity and send it to the cloud. People can watch you real time. They can give you advice real time, can make recs and transfer recs back and forth via the cloud. We learned a little bit what the cloud is, that we're using the cell service and Wi-Fi to get to a server somewhere, but we also have the ability to transfer via USB and get those files. We did find that there are several advantages to being connected at all times, whether you're standing in the middle of the field or you want to make an in-field decision. There are benefits to doing that. We know that through Ag Leader and their terms of service that your information there is safe. We would caution you as listeners, if you're not using a program that has that types of terms of service for you, that you monitor how your information is being stored. We like the idea of new technology and putting that to use. We know that the in-command display is a very powerful tool. We know that those tools are going to continue to drive productivity and profitability. And these are year-round tools that we can use. It doesn't have to be in the field at that time, but we can take a look at that. And of course, we thank Luke from Ag Leader for jumping on this podcast and sharing his wisdom with us. So before Corey sends our listeners out with a challenge, Luke, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
The best advice I've ever been given. Man, you really put me on the spot there. This is so corny, but I think it rings so true. And whether it's with data or whether it's any part of your life, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So you should listen twice as much as you talk. And if we go back to this data is telling you a lot, right? You need to be listening.
Yeah,
That's good.
that was clean. That was clean.
It almost took my challenge, but it didn't.
Oh.
I'm going to go to, we're capturing data at every turn. And if you're not, the first part of the challenge is start.
Yeah.
But take the time to make sure that the data that you're capturing is good data, because good data is going to lead to good decisions. Good decisions are going to lead to higher yield, better management, more efficiencies, which is going to expand your operation. And farming is such cutting edge. It's going to give you that edge. And just always be learning. If you're not learning, you're dying.
Yeah. No, that was great. Good job on the challenge there, Luke. If somebody wants to learn more about you or Ag Leader and the products that they offer, what's the best way for them to look you guys up?
Yeah, agleader.com is our website. We're very active on our social media channel, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. I don't know why I blanked on that one. TikTok, Instagram. We're post on there a lot. There's a lot of educational content, but there's some humorous stuff on there too. We've got some personality.
Yeah, I really love your guys' TikTok.
Yeah, this has been fun. I'm glad that this was able to work. Luke, glglad your family was safe throughout the hurricane. And too bad, that's what you get to deal with when you live in Florida. You don't have those here in Iowa. Yeah. No hurricanes up here. But thanks again.
I did live through a derecho, so.
Touche.
Yeah.
Touche. But yes, thanks again. And we really appreciate Ag Leader giving you some time to jump on here and share your wisdom with our audience.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys, everything you do. Podcasts, your messages are great. Love your independent bias. Love your way you insert some humor into there too.
We appreciate
you guys are awesome advocates for agriculture. We appreciate you.
We appreciate you too. And listeners, we also appreciate you. If you've got ideas, send them to farmforprofitllc@gmail.com. But until next time, have a good one.
Remember, if you aren't farming for profit, you won't be farming for long.